Before a single wall goes up, a new building requires tons of wet concrete, thousands of pounds of structural steel, and immense capital. Yet, despite the massive financial requirements of construction, the Indian real estate market historically operates on unverified verbal agreements. Billions of rupees exchange hands based on little more than a handshake and a neighborhood recommendation. This creates a classic principal-agent problem. The principal-agent problem is an economic scenario where the person you hire, the builder or the agent, has financial incentives that actively conflict with your goals as the homeowner or the principal. You want a fast, high-quality structure. The traditional contractor maximizes their profit by stretching timelines to juggle multiple jobs, using cheaper, ungraded materials, and demanding large upfront cash deposits. The downstream effects are vanished funds, endless timeline delays, and hidden structural flaws. Committing capital to the traditional construction market functions less like an investment and more like a high-risk gamble built on precarious trust. Recently, a new tier of managed construction platforms has emerged across 10 major Indian cities, claiming to eliminate these historic risks. Their operational model strips away the reliance on local trust and replaces it with rigid corporate mechanics. This decision tree maps out the landscape. Taking the traditional contractor route exposes your project to 3 vectors: cash risk, delay risk, and quality risk. Selecting the managed platform alternative counters those vulnerabilities with 3 mechanisms: escrow, penalties, and audits. We need to analyze if these corporate mechanisms actually protect the client on a physical job site, or if they merely mask the same underlying labor issues with marketing terminology. Choosing a managed platform over a local contractor requires you to trade upfront capital and design flexibility in exchange for severe risk mitigation. The most severe fear for any homeowner is a contractor absconding with a massive upfront deposit before the foundation is even dug. Managed platforms deploy a third-party escrow account to block this. Escrow is a financial arrangement where an entirely neutral third party holds and regulates the payment of funds between the client and the builder. This comparison matrix shows exactly how the finances flow. Under financial security, the escrow mechanism keeps your money locked in that neutral center block. The contractor payouts are strictly locked behind verified, physical project milestones. By holding capital hostage until work is proven, this neutralizes capital flight risk. However, this mechanism requires a hidden trade-off. To utilize corporate escrow, you must possess full, verifiable white money liquidity up front. This rigid requirement eliminates the hyper-flexible, off-the-books cash negotiations that local contractors traditionally use to bypass formal channels and lower tax burdens. Escrow successfully buys total financial security, but it permanently sacrifices your financial flexibility and informal tax advantages. The second systemic failure point is the notorious 6-month home renovation that stretches into a 2-year ordeal. Maintaining the relentless pace required to finish a structural build on time requires immense pressure on the labor force. Returning to our matrix, the timeline row highlights how managed platforms enforce on-time guarantees. They use a penalty mechanism that legally forces the builder to accept severe financial hits to their profit margin for every single day they run late. For the client, this avoids the crippling costs of paying parallel rent. But to accept that timeline liability, the builder requires a trade-off, a total design freeze. All architectural decisions must be permanently finalized before day 1. Mid-project changes, like moving a wall or changing a tile pattern, disrupt the schedule. Under a design freeze, these requests are strictly refused or incur punishing change order fees to protect the builder's timeline. Absolute timeline certainty is only possible by surrendering all of your creative flexibility once ground is broken. The final risk is insidious because it is often invisible. Structural flaws like improper concrete curing times or faulty plumbing pressures hidden behind fresh drywall. Managed platforms approach this by stripping away the subjective judgment of a local head worker, replacing it with up to 470 rigorous corporate-mandated quality checks. The third row of our matrix shows this auditing mechanism in action. A massive checklist enforces a standardized baseline of structural integrity across every single site they operate. Because the site is continually audited by corporate engineers, the homeowner no longer needs to physically visit every day. The final trade-off is the cost of that auditing infrastructure. Employing dedicated engineers requires heavy corporate overhead. This overhead directly inflates the bottom line price of the build. Furthermore, to efficiently pass standardized checklists, platforms often rely on uniform corporate building materials, replacing the bespoke, localized craftsmanship of independent artisans. Managed quality guarantees a definitively safe baseline structure, but inherently prices out the custom touch and cheaper labor of a traditional artisan. Managed platforms solve the construction trilemma strictly through the enforcement of corporate governance. This quadrant chart provides a framework for your decision, plotting your time available to supervise against your budget flexibility. If you are a remote investor or a time-poor professional, you sit in the top left quadrant. Your lack of physical presence makes the escrow and managed route mandatory to ensure your capital isn't wasted on an empty lot. Conversely, a budget-conscious local plots in the bottom right. If you have ample free time to project manage the site and source materials yourself, you can safely utilize a traditional contractor and save heavily on corporate overhead. The correct choice depends entirely on a simple binary. Do you have more time to manage risk yourself or more capital to outsource it? For the burned homeowner, someone who has already lost money to an absconding contractor, the corporate premium is easily justified as necessary insurance. When you hire a managed platform, you are engaging in institutional framework, rather than directly paying for raw bricks, cement, and local labor. The premium you pay funds a risk mitigation product, engineered to protect your sanity and your capital from an historically unregulated market. Before you sign any construction contract, aggressively audit your own risk tolerance and actual liquidity. True peace of mind in real estate development never comes from finding the cheapest quote. It comes from securing airtight accountability and aligned financial incentives.